we're going to graph this equation right here. You should know it's a parabola, and you should know the first step is to do x equals negative b over 2a. That gives me the center of my graph. So if I'm going to do negative b over 2a, in this particular problem, what's b? What's a? Well, b is the number next to right there is 4. A is a number in front of the x squared, which in this situation is negative 1. So x equals negative b over 2a. It looks like, again, b was 4, a was negative 1. So what do we have? It looks like that'd be negative 4 over negative 2. So x equals 2. What does that mean? I have a line of symmetry. Right here at 2. Right. On the benchmark, you don't have to label the line of symmetry, but right now, my line of symmetry is x equals 2, or my axis of symmetry. Just good to have the notes there. This is called your axis of symmetry. Okay. You don't need to label that on the benchmark, but okay, axis of symmetry. What does that mean? It means my parabola is going to revolve around it. So I now need to make a table of 5 values make a table of 5 values What's the center value going to be?
2.
That number 2. That 2 right there is the center, because that's the center of my graph. And then what other values are going to be on both sides of that? Well, what's 1 bigger than 2? 3. What's 1 bigger than 3? 4. What's 1 less than 2? 1 less than 1? 0. Okay, so the first value we're actually going to plug in is number 2. We're going to plug 2 into this equation, right, the given equation. That equation, I took out the x's, I'm going to plug in 2. So when I plug in 2, now a lot of people mess up here, but that is 2 squared, then make it negative. So 2 squared is 4, so that becomes a negative 4. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 1. So it looks like my answer is 5. What does that 5 represent? 2, 5 is an xy coordinate. 2, 5. There's a dot right there. Oh, by the way, before we go any farther, since a is negative 1, what do you know about the graph? If a is negative 1, it's going down. Just so you know. It just helps to know that. There are ways to look at it, but this one is a negative, so it's going downhill. Okay, do we want to plug in 1 or 3? I would plug in 1, it's smaller. You could plug in 3 if you want. Go ahead. So when I plug in 1, 1 squared is 1, then make it negative. 4 times 1 is 4, and then the plus 1. That's 3. 3 plus 1 is 4. So at 1, we're going to be up 4. 1, 4 is another coordinate. And lastly, plug in 0. I love 0. I think you know that by now. It's very easy to plug in. Plug 0 there, plug 0 there. 0 squared, make it negative. Okay, whatever. That's dumb. 0. That's 0. And that's 1. So 0 plus 1 is 1. So at 0, we went up 1. Okay, you see half your parabola? Let's make the other half of your parabola. So this dot is going to reflect over. It's called the line of axis of symmetry, makes it symmetrical. This value is going to reflect over to right here, and we have our basic graph. Remember, a parabola is a U shape, not a V shape, so it shouldn't be pointy. I don't like pointy parabolas. They shouldn't be pointy. Okay, there's your parabola. Now, just real quick, what would be the value for 3? What is the output for 3? What's it say right there? 3 is up 4. What's the value for 4? 1. Do you understand these values are always the same? The opposite ones are always the same. You don't have to take the time to plug them in. You could actually make a table with 3 values instead of 5, if you understand that. Okay. There's your parabola. I just want to point out some important points. That's your vertex. In this situation, it's 2, 5. And that right there is your y-intercept. And it looks like it's 0, 1. And my x-intercept I'm not going to label because they're not nice whole numbers. They're somewhere like decimals. I can't tell them for sure. By the way, your y-intercept is always your c value. You'll see it. C, your c value, this value by itself is always your y-intercept. It's kind of cool. Okay, there it is. Now the second one goes a lot faster. Write the equation for this in vertex form. Now again, vertex, this was called standard form, by the way. Standard form. This is vertex form. So if I want to write my equation in vertex form, well, by the name vertex form, you should know there's a vertex involved. So we go to the graph and we want to label that vertex. What is the coordinate for that vertex? It looks like it's -1, 7. So do you understand HK is equal to -1, 7. Pretty important to know HK, because you understand we're going to plug HK right here. What's the last number we need? Don't we need A? Okay, looking at this graph, since A is negative, looking at A, do you understand A is negative? So what's that mean about my graph? My A value is negative because it's upside down, so you can tell it's upside down. So I know my A is negative. Got it? If it was up, you understand my A would be positive. Second of all, how the heck do you tell the value of A? Watch carefully. It's kind of weird. What you do is you just take one increment. You go to your one step over and you put a dot. Okay, it's kind of different. But do you see how if I go 1 over, do you understand I went down 2? If I went 1 over, I went down 2. Look this way too. When I go 1 over, do I go down 2? That's what you got to look at. You got to look at one step over. Let's say do you understand your axis of symmetry is -1? When you take one step to the side, kind of like on our table here, your value went down 2. So your A value, since it went down 2, your A value is 2. If you went to the right once and that dot went down 5, if it was all the way down here at -2, that would be a 5. You go one step over and go down. It's kind of like slope. Isn't that down 2 over 1? Doesn't that look like a slope value? Y equals mx plus b, m kind of. It's kind of like a slope. So you go down 1 over 2. You always go over 1. So A is 2, but A isn't just 2. A is what? Isn't it -2? Because it's down. So what does my equation look like? Well, I would see it as -2 because we went down 2 over 1. H, wait, so x is there. H, well, H is -1, but isn't the opposite of H? So wouldn't that become a +1? And then would that K just stay the same? +7? There's the equation of the line. negative because it's down, 2 because it has basically a slope of 2 or down 2 over 1 to the first point, and the vertex is negative 1, 7. The opposite of negative 1 is positive 1, 7. A vertex form, this is standard form.